On the morning of August 4th, 1981, in a small law office in Toledo, Ohio, 20-year-old Cynthia Anderson unlocked the front door, turned on the radio, and sat down at her desk like she had every morning for the past year. She never got up again. Cynthia was known around that office for her routine, precise, almost ritual. She locked the door the second she stepped inside, alone. If she ever had to leave, even for 5 minutes, she left a note. Every single time. That morning, there was no note. By noon, her employers walked in to find the radio still playing, her desk still set for the day, a novel she'd been reading left open. Her car was parked outside, locked, untouched. Her purse and keys were gone. No struggle, no warning sign anyone could point to. No trace of Cynthia Anderson. For over 4 decades, this has remained one of Ohio's longest-running missing persons cases. A disappearance investigators built entire theories around, chased down for years, and got wrong. What actually happened to Cynthia that morning? And why did it take over 40 years for part of the truth to come out? Stay with us. This is a story you need to hear from the beginning. Cynthia Jane Anderson was born on February 4th, 1961, to Michael and Margaret Anderson. She was raised in a devout Christian fundamentalist household, and her family's week revolved around church, prayer meetings, worship services, camping trips organized through the congregation, seasonal gatherings. It wasn't an occasional part of her life. It was the structure her entire life was built on. Her father described her, in later interviews, as quiet and obedient, a young woman who never made waves, but who still had a wide circle of friends. People who knew her described someone easy to be around, someone who didn't attract conflict. That description matters because almost nothing about Cynthia's life up to that point suggested she was someone anyone would want to hurt, or someone who had any reason to run from it. By 1981, Cynthia was 20 years old and working as a legal secretary at a law office on East Manhattan Boulevard in Toledo, Ohio. Her employers were attorneys James Rabbit and Jay Feldstein, and by every account, she was reliable, the kind of employee who opened the office alone in the morning, had it ready before anyone else arrived, and rarely missed a step in her routine. She was also in a serious relationship. Her boyfriend was part of the same church community, and the two of them were on a shared path. Cynthia had already put in her notice at the law office with plans to leave that job behind and enroll in the same Bible college he was attending. For a young woman raised the way she was, this wasn't a small decision. It was the next expected chapter, mapped out well in advance. Her sister, Christine Savage, later gave one of the more revealing accounts of what home life was actually like. She described their household plainly. Their parents wanted them involved in church, and they were, without much room for anything else. But Christine also recalled something else, something quieter. She remembered overhearing Cynthia talk to their mother about nightmares, recurring ones, dreams where she was taken by someone she didn't know. At the time, no one treated it as anything more than a young woman's anxiety about an upcoming life change. In hindsight, it's one of the details people keep coming back to. What's clear is that Cynthia had habits, and they were consistent. She locked the office door the moment she was alone inside, every single morning. And if she ever needed to step away from her desk, even briefly, she left a note. Always, without exception. So no one would worry and no calls would go unanswered. Those two habits, the locked door and the note she never forgot to leave, would become two of the most important details investigators had to work with. Because on the morning everything changed, one of them held, and the other one didn't. In the year before Cynthia vanished, investigators had already been handed what looked like their strongest lead. Painted in large letters on a wall directly across from her office window were the words, "I love you, Cindy." Beneath it, smaller, 2 initials, GW. It wasn't hidden, and it wasn't subtle. Anyone who worked in that stretch of the strip mall would have seen it, and by several accounts, Cynthia was the only Cindy working anywhere along that row of offices. Whoever wrote it had chosen its placement carefully. The property owners painted over it. Within weeks, it came back, bigger than before, as if the first version hadn't made its point clearly enough. It stayed up for roughly 6 months before it was finally covered for good, but by then, it had already become the piece of the case investigators kept returning to. Detective William Adams and his team pulled that thread harder than any other. It was tangible in a way the phone calls weren't. A physical object, a signature, something that could theoretically be traced back to a name. Adams and his investigators worked through Cynthia's co-workers and friends, trying to match those two initials to anyone in her orbit who might have written them. What they found was a maintenance man who worked in the building and held keys to every office in the complex, including Cynthia's. On paper, it looked like the kind of lead that breaks a case open. He had access, he had matching initials, he moved through that building every day, unnoticed, the way maintenance staff always do. But in practice, the lead went nowhere. No physical evidence ever tied him to Cynthia's disappearance. No charges were ever filed. Investigators questioned him, and the trail, as far as official reporting shows, ended there. That should have closed the door on him as a suspect entirely. But the accounts of what happened next don't agree with each other, and that disagreement has never been resolved. Some reporting on the case describes him plainly as cleared, a name investigators looked into, found nothing on, and moved past. A dead end, like so many others in this case. Other accounts tell a different story. Drawing on the work of a private investigator who looked into the case independently, these accounts identify him more directly as the man behind the graffiti and add something the official record doesn't. That he has since died, taking whatever he knew, if he knew anything at all, with him. There's no way now to ask him directly which version of events is accurate, whether he was a man wrongly suspected or a man who was never fully cleared, has never been settled publicly. It's one of several places where this case splits cleanly in two, depending entirely on which account you happen to be reading. Then there's a separate claim about the graffiti, one that surfaced years after the maintenance man's story had already gone cold, and only in a single account posted online. It never appeared in police statements. It was never picked up by local news. According to that account, the graffiti had nothing to do with Cynthia at all. The message, it claims, was intended for a different woman entirely, one who is said to have come forward on her own, years later, and put the theory to rest herself. The account goes further, naming the woman and the man who allegedly wrote it, and stating that he died in the years after Cynthia disappeared, long before anyone connected him to her case in the first place. If that account is accurate, it would mean investigators spent years, maybe decades, chasing a signature that had nothing to do with the woman they were looking for. It would mean the entire "I love you, Cindy" thread, the one Adams treated as the case's most promising lead, was a coincidence from the start. But a claim repeated in only one place without confirmation from police records, court documents, or contemporary news coverage isn't something that can be treated as settled. Until it surfaces somewhere else, in a source that can actually be checked, it remains exactly what it is, a claim, not a fact. This story can flag it. It can't close it. What isn't in dispute is what came next for investigators at the time. The graffiti had given them something to hold on to, a name, a lead, a direction to point the entire early investigation. Its resolution, uncertain then and still unsettled now, left them with nothing solid to replace it. Decades into this case, true crime communities online have circulated dozens of claims about Cynthia Anderson. New names, new theories, tidy explanations that promise to finally close the book on what happened to her. And none of them hold up when you go looking for where they actually came from. Take the graffiti. For years, it was treated as the case's most promising thread, the one lead that felt like it could crack everything open. Somewhere along the way, a story started circulating that the whole thing had been solved quietly, off the record, that the message was never about Cynthia at all, that it belonged to a different couple entirely, and that the mystery had been put to rest by someone who came forward on her own. It's a satisfying story. It ties off a loose end that's frustrated investigators and armchair detectives alike for over 40 years. But trace that story back to its source, and it leads to exactly one place, a single anonymous comment posted years ago on a fan forum dedicated to unsolved cases. No police department has confirmed it, no newspaper has reported it, no court record backs it up, and a search for the two names attached to that claim turns up nothing else anywhere. No obituary, no local news mention, no public record connecting either of them to Toledo in 1981. That doesn't prove the story is false, but it means it cannot be reported here as fact, no matter how many times it gets repeated online. Until it comes from somewhere that can actually be verified, it stays exactly where it started, unconfirmed. What can be said with confidence is this: The maintenance man investigators identified through those initials was never charged. No physical evidence ever tied him to Cynthia's case. Beyond that, even the official record splits. Some accounts describe him as cleared outright, a name investigators looked at and moved past. Other, later reporting tied to work done independently by a private investigator, describes him differently and adds a detail the earlier record never mentioned, that he has since died. If that's accurate, whatever he knew, if he knew anything, is gone with him. Two versions of the same man, and no way now to reconcile them. The drug theory doesn't fare any better under scrutiny. Richard Neller and Jose Rodriguez Jr. were the closest thing Toledo police ever had to a break in the case, and even that fell apart under its own weight. The informant who claimed Rodriguez confessed to killing Cynthia was found unreliable by the judge who heard the testimony. No charges tied either man to her disappearance. Neller died in 2024, decades removed from the case, having never gone on record about it. The Cook brothers, responsible for at least 9 murders across Ohio during the same era, were asked directly. They denied any involvement in Cynthia's case, the same way they've denied involvement in cases they weren't responsible for, and confirmed to others they were. Even the anonymous tip about the White House never led anywhere concrete. A voice, a location too vague to trace, and then silence. Whoever made that call, if they knew something real, took it with them too. What's left, after peeling back every lead that once looked promising, is not a solved case dressed up as unsolved. It's a case that has resisted every serious attempt to close it for over 4 decades. Every name investigators pulled on came loose eventually. Every theory that looked close to breaking the case instead dissolved under closer examination. One unreliable witness, one unresolved discrepancy, one anonymous claim at a time. Cynthia Anderson's case remains officially open, classified as endangered missing. Her mother died in 1983, her father in 2008, both of them gone without ever learning what happened to their daughter. No DNA testing or genetic genealogy work has been publicly reported in connection with this case, tools that have reopened and solved disappearances far older than this one. 45 years on, nothing about Cynthia Anderson's disappearance has actually been resolved. What's changed isn't the answer. It's how many of the old answers have quietly stopped holding up. Every theory in this case eventually runs into the same wall. Something that almost fits, and then doesn't. Start with the drug theory, because for a long time it was the one investigators took most seriously. Richard Neller had worked at the same law firm as Cynthia in 1981. Years later, he was convicted alongside a client, Jose Rodriguez Jr., in a long-running drug conspiracy. The theory that grew out of that conviction was straightforward. If Cynthia had been in that office at the wrong moment, working late, answering a call she wasn't meant to hear, she could have picked up on something about an active drug deal without even realizing what she was hearing. In a case with almost no physical evidence, a theory like that offered something rare. An actual motive tied to a real person provably connected to criminal activity. It nearly held together. At Rodriguez's 1995 trial, an informant testified that Rodriguez had confessed to killing Cynthia. For a moment, it looked like the case might actually break open, more than a decade after she vanished. Then the judge overseeing the trial ruled that testimony unreliable, and the theory lost its only piece of direct evidence. No charges were ever filed connecting either man to her disappearance. What remained was circumstance, a convicted attorney, a missing woman who once worked near him, and a claim that couldn't survive scrutiny in a courtroom. Then there's the theory that requires no criminal at all, the possibility that Cynthia simply left on her own terms and has spent the last 4 decades living a life no one back in Toledo has ever traced. On its surface, it's the theory most people want to be true. It's the only version of this story where Cynthia is still out there. Not as a victim, but as someone who made a choice. The evidence for it is thin, but it's not nothing. There was no sign of a struggle in that office. The door, by several accounts, was still locked from the inside, and she left behind a substantial amount of money sitting untouched in her bank account. Money that, had she planned to disappear and start over somewhere else, would have made that new life considerably easier. She never touched it. Her social security number has never been used again, not once, in the more than 40 years since she vanished. In an era before widespread digital tracking, disappearing and never using your legal identity again wasn't impossible, but it also wasn't easy, and it wasn't free. Walking away from that money, if she did walk away, would have meant walking away from the one resource that made starting over anywhere realistic. Investigators have never been able to fully rule the theory in or out. It survives less because the evidence supports it, and more because nothing else has managed to disprove it either. For most of this case's history, that's where things stood. Two theories, neither provable, neither dead. Then, in 2024, something happened that had nothing to do with new evidence, new witnesses, or new leads, and everything to do with the slow passage of time working against the case in a different way. Richard Neller died. By the time of his death, Neller's life had taken him well beyond the courtroom that ended his legal career. He'd been convicted on 5 felony counts in 1996 for his role in a drug conspiracy, and in 2003, the Ohio Supreme Court permanently disbarred him, closing the door on his ability to practice law in the state ever again. But the years after that weren't defined only by the conviction. According to his obituary, Neller had started his career as a high school teacher before ever going to law school, and later, after leaving the legal profession, returned to another passion entirely: journalism. He founded a Spanish-language newspaper in Toledo in 1989 and went on to launch a cultural festival and a scholarship fund in the city, work that, by his own family's account, he was remembered for as much as anything from his legal career. None of that changes what he was once theorized to know, or not know, about the weeks before Cynthia Anderson vanished. Neller never spoke publicly about her case, not during his trial, not after his release from prison, not in the decades he spent building a second career far removed from the one that ended in disbarment. If he carried any knowledge of what happened to her in that office in 1981, he carried it through every year that followed, and he carried it into 2024, when he died. That makes his death, ordinary and unremarkable as it might have looked to anyone outside this case, the most recent development connected to Cynthia Anderson's disappearance in over 4 decades of dead ends. Not a break in the case? Not new evidence? Just the closing of one more door that had, for nearly 30 years, remained at least theoretically open. The possibility, however small, that Neller knew something and might, someday, say it. That possibility is gone now. Investigators are left, in 2026, with the same unresolved theories they've had for decades. None of them confirmed, none of them eliminated, and one of the people most closely tied to the most concrete of those theories no longer able to answer a single question about it. The drug theory, the voluntary disappearance, the possibility that someone else entirely was responsible, all of it still sits exactly where it sat for years, unresolved. What's changed isn't the case. It's the number of people left alive who might have been able to close it. 45 years after Cynthia Anderson walked into that office on East Manhattan Boulevard, her case remains open. Officially, she is still classified as an endangered missing person, a designation that has not changed since the week she vanished. Her file sits today where it has for years, listed on NamUs, the National Database for Missing and Unidentified Persons, and on the Charlie Project, one of the most comprehensive public archives of unsolved disappearances in the country. Both list her exact height and weight at the time she went missing, the scar on her forehead from a childhood case of chickenpox, the fishhook-shaped scar on her knee, and the clothing she was last seen wearing. Details preserved in exacting detail, waiting for something, anything, to match them to. Neither of her parents lived to see the case resolved. Her mother, Margaret Anderson, died in 1983, just 2 years after her daughter disappeared. Her father, Michael Anderson, died in 2008, 27 years into a search that never produced an answer. His obituary listed Cynthia among those who preceded him in death, a quiet, painful acknowledgement of what the family had likely come to believe long before anyone could prove it. As far as public records show, the Toledo Police Department's tip line for Cynthia's case has remained active. Anyone with information, no matter how small it might seem, is still being asked to call. And here is where the case runs into an uncomfortable contrast, one worth sitting with. In recent years, genetic genealogy, the same technology that identified the Golden State Killer and has since cracked open cold cases decades older than anyone thought solvable, has been applied to other unresolved cases from Toledo's own past. In 1987, the burned remains of a young woman were discovered near Collingwood Boulevard, just off Interstate 75. For decades, she was known only as Toledo Jane Doe. In March of 2025, funded through a nonprofit called the Porchlight Project and processed by a DNA lab that specializes in exactly this kind of work, she was finally identified. Her name was Tammy Lowe, 18 years old, from Taylor, Michigan. The same organization is currently funding similar work on another cold case entirely, a man known only as Western Reserve John Doe, killed by a car nearly 200 miles away in 1982 and never identified. No comparable public effort has been reported for Cynthia Anderson's case. No DNA testing, no genetic genealogy work that has surfaced in any news report, court filing, or public statement in the 4.5 decades since she disappeared. That doesn't mean nothing has ever been attempted behind the scenes. It means that if it has, it hasn't been made public. What's certain is this: the technology capable of finally answering the question everyone still asks about Cynthia Anderson already exists, and it's already being used just a few miles away on someone else's case. Go back to that morning, August 4th, 1981, a radio playing to an empty room. A desk set for a workday that never happened, a novel left open to a page no one can explain. 45 years later, that image hasn't changed, and neither has the question at the center of it. What happened to Cynthia Anderson in the span of about 2 hours, inside an office she'd locked from the inside 100 times before? Every theory this case has produced has run into the same problem. The drug conspiracy theory lost its only witness to a judge's ruling. The stalker theory lost its clearest suspect to a lifetime bar he apparently ignored, and then to his own death in 2024, with nothing more said. The graffiti that once looked like the case's strongest lead has splintered into competing, unconfirmed accounts, none of them resolved. The voluntary disappearance theory survives only because no one has ever been able to prove it wrong, not because anyone has been able to prove it right. What's left after 4.5 decades isn't a solved case dressed up as a mystery. It's a genuinely unresolved one. A woman who was 20 years old, who had her next year planned out down to the Bible college she intended to attend, who never missed a single note when she stepped away from her desk, until the one morning it mattered most. Her case is still open, her file is still active on NamUs and the Charlie Project, still listed with the same physical details recorded in 1981, still waiting for a match. Both of her parents died without an answer. Her sister, if she is still living, has spent more than 4 decades without one either. The tools that identified Toledo's own Jane Doe just last year, the same tools currently being used on a cold case 200 miles away, have not, as far as any public record shows, been turned toward Cynthia's case at all. That's not a dramatic note to end on, it's just the fact of where things stand. No confirmed suspect, no confirmed fate. No modern forensic work publicly applied to a case that, by every account, would benefit from it. If you're watching this and you have any information on Cynthia Anderson or on any of the cold cases we cover here at the Unsolved Vault, we want to hear from you in the comments below. Someone out there knows something. Sometimes, that's all it takes to finally close a case that stayed open far too long.